This week's Pensioners for Indy podcast is about campaigning. Campaigning in the old normal and campaigning in the new normal. So first of all, you're going to hear from some of us who run a Pensioners for Independence stall out in Milngavie. Up until lockdown, we were doing it every couple of weeks. Friday lunchtime for a couple of hours, the gazebo got put up, the leaflets got put out. We walked around the centre of Milngavie, chatting to people, chatting to ourselves, everything that any campaigner knows how to do and is probably quite familiar with doing. That's the old normal. And then we're going to move on to a discussion about campaigning in the new normal. And the people in this talk are myself, Valerie Gold, Sheila Stevens and Mary McCabe. We're all in Glasgow Pensioners for Independence group. Mary and Sheena are our stalwarts for setting up stalls. If it wasn't for them, we probably wouldn't do it. And they really wanted to get campaigning again. So they've been thinking about how to do it while keeping themselves socially distanced and safe and keeping anyone that they chat to also safe. And then the big question, where to do it? The answer to that turned out to be Alexandra Park entrance in the east end of Glasgow. Anyway, here they are, a couple of talks from pensioners who get out there and campaign. Hope you enjoy them. Are we in? Yes, we've got it now. Okay, so going to start this again. So this is the first time that Pensioners for Independence have tried doing a wee bit of recording when we're out in stalls, and I'm standing here in Milngavie. The guys have just put up the gazebo and the table with the leaflets out, and I'm standing talking to Jennifer.
Hello.
So you and I have been coming and doing this for a few months now. What brought you along?
What brought me along? Well, in the last referendum, 2014, it was the older folk, any folk over 45, that voted no. And if it hadn't been for them, I think we would have been independent by now. So what we have to do is try speak to the older people, because let's face it, they were frightened. They were frightened at the very end, just before the referendum. They were going to lose their pensions, etc., etc., which was absolute nonsense. So it's not for our generation, it's for the young folk coming up. I have grandchildren, and I want to see a better Scotland for them, an independent Scotland.
That's great. I know, and I mean, it's true enough that maybe it was just if our age group had voted a bit more strongly for yes, we might have got, well, it would have been an improvement anyway, but only about a quarter of over 60s voted yes. So yeah, that's what Pensioners for Independence is all about. And have you noticed any particular themes that come up here in Milngavie? I know I was talking to a guy the other week, and I said, what do you think about this Brexit deal? That was when Mr Johnson had got it through in October. He said, I don't care. Well, it was a bit stronger than that. He said, I don't care a bleep. I live in Dublin, I'm fine. And then I got talking to him about just the difference between how Scotland's been treated in our negotiations with Westminster and how EU has supported Dublin the whole time. So Brexit's obviously a big deal in this election, isn't it? And then up here we're standing in Joe Swinson's constituency. We're both pulling a wee bit of a face. Great, so thanks for talking to us. And,
thank you for asking.
We'll go and find someone else on the team. Bye.
Bye.
Yep, so here we are. So now I'm with Brian, who's another of our stalwarts. And Jennifer was just saying, Pensioners for Independence, the whole aim being to try and get our age group to vote, for more of us to vote yes. And you've another one who's been here for a few months on this stall every other Friday. What do you think yourself about, what will persuade pensioners round to yes?
Well, I think it's. I think we will. But I don't think it's purely a question of persuading pensioners. I think a lot of it is persuading more generally, because we add a bit of gravitas.
Ah, right. Yeah, gravitas, folks. You heard that word here.
Yeah. See, kind of because people are inclined to assume that all these things is for a particular party, and this is not for a particular party. Yeah. It's for independence in a more general sense, which would include Greens and various other people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's a powerful technique.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know about you. It's a little bit. I mean, I've been coming for since we started it up, and it's a bit outside my comfort zone. My comfort zone is sorting out the website, kind of taking the minutes or something. But it's just a little bit outside my comfort zone, going up to complete strangers and starting up a conversation. But actually, here there's a lot of good responses.
Yes.
Not everyone's convinced about independence, but they're prepared to ask good questions.
Yes, I think that's right. It's out with my natural comfort zone as well. But I did go to the ambassador training, which was about engaging with people and trying to present the kind of a reasonably balanced approach to things.
Was that the course run by Business for Scotland?
It was run by Business for Scotland, but there's a parallel course that's also run by Mills.
Oh yes.
And that covers pretty much the same ground, but they're not the same organisation.
No.
So there's a bit of competition there. I attended both, and I think it's maybe made me a bit more ambassadorial. So I'm a bit more comfortable with approaching strangers. But I find it easier to approach strangers on neutral territory, and this is too near home.
Ah, right, okay. You live down the road then.
I probably feel more comfortable doing it in Argyle Street rather than here.
Yeah.
But I think it's working. It's working, and I also find that there's some very impressive people in Pensioners for Independence, which is why I'll be going to the meeting tonight. This afternoon.
This afternoon,
yes,
right.
absolutely.
Yeah, this afternoon, folks. Bacchus Bar in the centre of Glasgow, if you're around.
Downstairs.
Downstairs in the bar, yeah.
No, I think there's some very, very impressive people with who have a track record in the real world, in inverted commas, or they're retired now, and of course they've got time to.
Yeah. And I was saying to Jennifer that because we're standing here in Milngavie and it's Joe Swinson's constituency, and I discovered the other day that one of the people who's on the ballot sheet, one of the candidates, is a Rosemary Dixon, who's standing as an independent, but she's there because she's one of the WASPy women. Oh. She's in the WASPy Glasgow group, and she just thought, well, I'm going to do it, and I don't know how she's getting on yet. And I made sure she knows about us being here on a Friday, so you never know, she might turn up. But that was quite impressive, and that's quite a big thing for at least for the women of our age group.
Sure. Yeah. And I think the evidence is that Glasgow has eventually come round to being sympathetic to the cause of WASPy. Glasgow Council, I mean.
Yes.
That can be no bad thing.
Yeah. Well, really good to talk to you.
Okay.
And I'll see if I can actually get someone who's a Milngavie person who isn't actually on the stall. So.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, we're mobbed here.
Yeah, we're mobbed, I know. Well, thanks.
We don't actually live right here.
That's okay. Yeah, so still in Milngavie Friday morning, and as well as talking to the team, I've also got two people who are not on the team but are passing by. And so you just stopped to get one of our badges.
Well, yes, we met the lady, and she sort of was telling us about, because we didn't know, we actually live in Aberfeldy in Perthshire.
Okay, right.
And we didn't know about this organisation, Pensioners for Independence, or this group, should we say?
Yeah.
We think it's brilliant. We are pensioners and we are for independence, so that
Fantastic.
fits. So having talked to your representative just over there, we thought we'd come and see what you have to offer here.
Yeah, so if you're not, you can tell from your accent, you're not originally
well, that's a good guess.
You're an English Scot?
We're citizens of Scotland. We're English Scots, if you like, but we prefer citizens of Scotland.
Absolutely, that's a good one. You've been up here long?
Yeah.
We've been in Scotland for, I I think 14, 15 years now.
Yeah. We originally
long enough to get to know us.
Well, we originally came because I was a teacher in Orkney for 8 years, and then when my eyesight started to go a bit, I stopped teaching, and we moved down to Perthshire, which is fairly handy to our son who's in Glasgow. So we know Glasgow and we're never going anywhere else but Scotland. So this is our future.
And you're convinced about Scotland being an independent country?
Absolutely, 100%, no question. I mean, how can you argue against it? There's just so much to be said for it, and not least that in this time of terrible pessimism, it is the great hope and a positive future, rather than looking forward to a future that's just going to pull you down wherever you look, really.
Can I just say something as well? That, a lot of people think of independence as being a kind of, over-nationalistic thing, and I think actually that's wrong. It's about self-governance, it's about having our own economy. It's not about making enemies of England and Wales and other parts of the world. It's to do with joining together, as well as being a separate nation in the sense of the political and economic side of things. So people get the wrong impression. I think that's why Nicola Sturgeon doesn't particularly like the idea of the Scottish Nationalist Party banner. In a way, because
it isn't even the Scottish Nationalist Party, the Scottish National Party, but it gets made. It's become nationalist, partly because of mainstream media commentators.
That's right.
The whole importance, I think, is to have responsibility for and to look after the interests of Scotland as a nation, and at the same time to look outwards, and in our experience that's actually what the SNP and independence organisations have done. It's to look outwards, to make links and to join together, but also to look out for the interests of Scotland and the people who live and contribute to Scotland.
Especially to continue to be friends with Europe, which is very important.
Absolutely. Yes. So pro-Europe?
Pro-Europe.
Definitely pro-Europe.
Well, like most of Scotland. We're 62 and probably more than that now.
Scotland has just got so much in common with Europe. I was a French teacher for over 30 years and know a lot about France. And there's just so much in common between, Scotland and what Scotland stands for, and Europe and what Europe stands for. So, no question.
That's fantastic. So, I know, back in 2014, and I was always going to vote yes. But I did look into the finances of it, and then thought, my goodness, we're one of the richest countries in the world, and yet, especially for our age group, but I think generally people were frightened. They believed the poor stuff.
To be honest, it wasn't helped by Alex Salmond and his answers to some of the questions when he was given the option of answering about the economic situation in Scotland and how we would support ourselves. It was very badly put, and I think it's been much better put recently. And if any further. I don't know whether they're going to issue another white paper, are they, about Scottish independence? But if they do, they need to make that very, very strong part of it, because people will ask that question all the time.
They will, and they'll get onto the currency. I mean, he was a bit ambushed by that currency by George Osborne, just saying, well, no, you can't. Which was just rubbish, ridiculous.
The other point,
on the other hand, Alec, you would have thought, would have, been who he is. He would have been ready for that.
The other point I would make, though, is that I do, as a matter of, I tend to watch First Minister's Questions most weeks, and I enjoy politics and listening to the radio and things like this. But I think overall you have to do that to get the full picture, because particularly if you listen to, shall we say, the UK-wide BBC, you're getting a tiny view into the kind of debates and discussions that are going on. And even I, who I listen to the radio, I read the papers, I watch TV, but even our son is 27 and is very pro-independence as well, and of course he taps into the online debates and so on, and even he, when I sort of getting a bit down about things, he said, Mum, you should listen to what's going on the online, because as well as all the nutcases, there's an awful lot of intelligent debate that's going on. So I mean, that's the key, and the key is getting the message across to people who haven't got time or energy to listen in depth, because they're only getting the sound bites.
Exactly, and that was one of the reasons for this group being set. I mean, it was set up in 2014 or thereabouts, and then it kind of went into a bit of a lull, as a lot of yes groups did. And I thought a couple of years back, I just need to get active. It was when Mrs May said now is not the time.
I
need to get active. And I thought, well, I'm that age group, that's maybe where I should put effort.
Yeah. So is this Pensioners for Independence across Scotland, or is it just in this area?
Yeah, we have groups. So we've got 2 well-established groups in Greater Glasgow, that's who we are. And then there's Edinburgh and Lothians. But there's also a new group started up, and there's one in Selkirk, there's one now in Troon, there's a Stirling one being set up, there's one in Aberdeen and Perth, and the other one is Fife, South Fife.
Excellent. That is good. Yeah. And the more kind of bits of the population you can get to identify with and be involved in the whole question, the better, because sometimes I think some groups tend to either assumptions get made about them, and we can speak as people with English accents living in Scotland, those assumptions get made, or else they feel a bit kind of excluded from the debate. So it's nice to be as inclusive as possible.
And it's we're not as you picked up, we're not an organisation that's aligned with any political party. We're neutral in that sense. We're not neutral or independent, but we're neutral in that sense. And we have a national coordinating group that I'm part of as well, and we got funding from the Scottish Independence Foundation, which lets us sort of prime the pump, as it were, for new groups starting up. So Aberfeldy. You're not far from Perth or
it's good to know there's a presence in Perth actually.
So what do you reckon about this election?
Well, I have to say at the moment I'm feeling very, very concerned and depressed. Normally on a general election night I would stay up through the night and watch the results coming in and be very excited. I don't know if I've got the heart to do that this time. I'm just going to wake up the next morning and think, okay, what's it like? What do we do now?
When you look at the state of the Westminster Parliament and some of the characters that we're supposedly voting for, you tend to want to despair. My view is that the Westminster system is broken, and that we've got to have a complete change in the way that politics is organised, the way that Parliament is organised down there. It's just people screaming at each other over the ballot box and making sort of silly comments. Is just not the way politics should be. And the Scottish Parliament is much more representative of the way that I think things should be done.
A better kind of election system. I do get a bit frustrated with the list set up, but actually it is good.
It is good. I think it is good, and I think you get, you obviously need a government that is going to lead the way, but you also need a government that is prepared to work with other parties for the greater good. And I think there's plenty of evidence that that's the case in Scotland.
And it's in having the Green. Probably if we're independent with a decent electoral system, I'd vote Green. And I do think that having the Greens there, they nudge, they can, sometimes a bit more than nudge, poke the SNP
definitely.
to get.
And they're not afraid to speak out, and I think that's a good thing. We shouldn't be afraid of that.
And there's no reason at all why all parties shouldn't work together. I mean, you've got that situation in Norway, for example, where you've got lots of different parties that have a coalition. Things take a bit longer because there's got to be compromises, but at least you've got a representation of every kind of point of view together there, and they're trying to work together to create a better future,
a better country for us now. And I mean, this particular, like you, I'm usually up all night for an election campaign. I don't know if I'm going to make it, but what I'm noticing is that I'm listening to BBC News or Channel 4 or whatever, and mostly I'm going, well, that doesn't really apply. Can you not tell them what we're doing in Scotland? We've already done that. So I sort of feel like
it's very worrying.
I'm listening to an election campaign. It's about another country.
Exactly. And I think when we've talked to friends of ours south, for example, in the last independence referendum, and they just haven't heard any of the kind of information, any of the views, any of the arguments. They just had a tiny, tiny little soundbite that's been sandwiched in the middle of a load of other stuff. And that is really worrying, because that helps them to form a view of Scotland which is actually completely false.
Yes, indeed.
And we get very cross about that.
And I mean, I've got a subscription to the Guardian online, and I thought, I'll just go and see what they're saying about the SNP manifesto yesterday. Could I find it?
Exactly.
Eventually I found it was quite a good little article, quite a good fair article, but it was buried. Couldn't find it anywhere.
That's right.
And yet this is the third largest party in the country. And they don't know what we're doing.
Right. And just to kind of repeat something I said earlier, which is that worries me actually as well for the kind of, if you like, the majority of the Scottish population, because I know what it's like to be a working person who hasn't got an awful lot of time to catch up on things, and if you're just going for headlines in your paper that you pick up at the station or what have you, you're not necessarily going to get the full picture, and that's something which heaven knows how you get across it. But the more that people talk about it in the street and so forth, as happened in the last Indy Rep, then that's a good thing.
Yeah,
that's
it's
a good
great.
thing.
Well, it's really great talking to you. Go to our website. Eventually, I'll edit this a little bit. If it's okay with you, I'll put it up.
You carry on.
You can show your.
It's nice to get a chance to express our points of view.
Great. Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Nice to meet you.
Owe you for the badge.
Put a donation in it. So here we are, four of us all four of us in Glasgow, pensioners for Indy, and we're just going to be sitting here talking a bit about the kind of ways that we've campaigned in the past before the coronavirus crisis, and a new initiative to see if we can find out how to campaign in, what's going to be a new normal. So Sheena, you've done such a lot on, what on the stalls up till now. Do you want to tell us a bit and tell, folk who are listening a bit about how all that got going? Because you and Mary kind of got it underway, didn't you?
Well, the Pensioners for Indy forming a post-2014 Indy referendum in Glasgow, we quickly built up a very strong group of pensioners concerned mainly about issues which impact on older people, sort of over 60s mainly. And Mary and I have campaigned for independence through the SNP, although the Pensioners for Indy is a non-party political group, which is, in some ways it engaged with a lot of other people who weren't particularly party political. It's not everybody's cup of tea to stand at stalls or, go out and speak to people. I've always been used to speaking to people, so I never really found it particularly difficult to approach someone and speak to them.
So was that the stall that started off in Argyle Street?
Yes. It was trying to find a location was quite difficult actually. The main problem is you have quite a lot of materials to take with you, such as a table and leaflets. So it's quite hard work sort of loading up the car and getting there, but parking the car is a big issue, particularly if you're in a city centre location. I would say probably in some of the more country areas it's probably much simpler. But we did find a place where we could stop the car and quickly decant all the materials, and there was usually always at least four of us there to take the things that we needed out of the car, and then usually it was Mary or someone would go and then park the car for 2 hours in a car park, which we had to pay for, of course.
I remember there was at least one parking ticket, wasn't there?
We've had a parking ticket, yes. Initially, we didn't have any protection from the rain, but Pensioners for Indy, through funding, we got a gazebo, which has made a huge difference. Unfortunately, in Argyle Street, where we have it regularly, there is a sort of crosswind. Of course, we're a windy country, that's why we have lots of wind farms. But we persevered, and we did it mostly through the winter. We were just wrapped up for them. There's plenty of shops about. If you forget your gloves, you can go and buy another pair. So, and we found generally people were quite intrigued with us. I think we were all kind of older people, and they sort of wondered, what are all these mad older people doing standing in the middle of Argyle Street? This must be something quite important that has engaged them. Maybe I should get involved. And we've got a lot of membership through it. We have a forum where people can sign their names, and we say to them that they can join the Pensioners for Indy. There are groups now all over Scotland. In the city centre, you do get a huge diversity of people, from particularly foreigners as well. We get they're all very very interested.
Wasn't there an American lady or family that you were talking to one day?
Oh gosh, there's been so many, Marlene. I can't think. I mean, yesterday to go on from that, the stalls have been very successful. people are very generous, giving donations. Sometimes people on their lunch break, they're at work and they say, oh, we support you, but I don't have time to talk, but I'll put some in your donation box. Also, Heather was superb at doing the stones, which people, we don't ask for money, but they can give a donation for the stones. Also the jewellery, earrings and bracelets went very, very well. And we did make quite a lot of money from them. So we've more or less, we have paid for all the things that we've got, the leaflets, the gazebo, everything's kind of we've paid for from the money that's come back. So our profit and loss account is pretty well balanced, I think.
Yeah, I know. And I mean, do you think, you know, do you think it does? Do you think it's effective? Do you think is it mostly people who are already maybe yes voters that come and chat to you, or do you get, not that that's actually a bad thing in itself, because you know, it's all to the good if we just kind of educate each other and people see what we're all doing. But do you think folk who are not quite maybe swithering a bit kind of come and
No, I think for the past 2 years, I would say, particularly since the Brexit vote, people do want to talk about the people who have not been, maybe even not ever voted before. They've not felt politically inclined to vote. I think the Brexit thing has awakened a sort of need in them to make their voice heard. And sometimes it's difficult to assess whether they change their mind or not. But we don't push people. We give them leaflets if there's an issue that particularly they're interested in, and they maybe don't know an awful lot about it. We try not to lecture them. We'll give them a leaflet. We tell them about the National, which is the paper that supports the independence cause. And at one point on the stall, we did have Nationals one day that we were giving out free to everybody, and that went very, very well. Yeah. I'd love to do that again.
Yeah, that was good, wasn't it?
National, I know they're financially strapped, but if they could arrange to do that and give us a National every maybe once a month that we could give out on a Thursday, that was very good. So I was kind of the town crier, get your National here.
I think you got your, I think that was the day Marlene got the papers and I brought them in and got a ticket. Yes. But it was worth it because I got a cracking photograph of you, of the 4 of you, and it ended up in the National, which was brilliant.
Oh yeah, right. That was good.
And it's not just Mary and I mean, there's about, I think at the most there's been about 8 of us. I can't remember, but so even if you want to do it, but you can't do it every Thursday, or that, even if you just come along now and again, we're very pleased to see you. And you know, if you just want to stand at the stall and let people approach you again, that's perfectly okay.
Yeah.
You know, not everybody is quite as forward as Mary and I.
Well, I mean, the thing is, you got Sheena, because you then started to help those of us who wanted to start a stall out in Milngavie going. So
yes.
I don't live in Milngavie, but you know, I'm out that part of Glasgow. So I said I'd help with that, and there was 3 or 4 of us. We didn't have any experience of doing it, and then you came out from Glasgow every. You know, we do it every sort of couple of weeks, don't we?
Yeah.
And that was just brilliant. And I mean, I tell you, it's out of my comfort zone doing that kind of thing. I really kind of, once I'm talking to someone, I'm fine. I'm really, really enjoying it. But it's the bit of not going up to someone, but you know, making that initial contact that I just find a wee bit kind of, it's not exactly scary, but it's just a bit, I don't know, you know. And actually most people, I mean, if people don't want to talk, they'll just walk past. But once you do find someone that does want to talk, it's really good. It's really interesting.
I think there's ways that the best ways that I find is maybe if they've got, try and find a talking point that's nothing to do with politics. For instance, you could say, "Oh, have you been shopping today?" Or, "Oh, what a lovely dog." Or even I've said to people, "Oh, really, I love your coat or your dress," or just something like that. Just to start a conversation. That's it. Something that's kind of personal to start a conversation. I mean, your first question about do you change people's minds? Yes, we do change people's minds, I would say. But the majority, probably, people that come up, probably have already decided in independence. I mean, we get people that voted for independence and have now changed back to not wanting to vote for independence. Occasionally you get some that can be quite vociferous and not threatening, I wouldn't say, although, and seeing that yesterday, Mary and I had one of the most threatening people I've ever experienced, and Mary wasn't, but I was a bit frightened of him. Won't go into it, but it was okay, but I didn't like that at all. Very angry man. But he didn't come close. Have you got a...
Yeah, I was just going to say, just to add on to that point, although I've not been as regular on the pensioners for Indy stalls, I agree with Sheena that your aim isn't really to, totally change somebody's mind in the space of, a very short conversation. I think your aim is, well, for a start, to encourage the folk who are already pro-independence, because they like to see you there, but also it's to plant little seeds. They may not have a Damascene conversion on the spot. That's not realistic. But just planting wee seeds, and as Sheena's so right, I mean, she's an old hand at this, that you find something to talk about, the weather or what just something neutral, and from there, you can then sort of sometimes move on. But I think I've also heard other folk talking, experienced campaigners, and the idea is you really need to listen more than to actually tell people stuff, because it's not, although facts and information are important, that's often not really the key thing that convinces people, is it? It's how people feel about things. And
it's an emotional thing, Val. I mean, people will vote. A lot of having your vote has been forgotten. It's such an important thing to use. People fought for it, men and women, but people can vote for fickle reasons. Just maybe when they go to vote, they just think, oh, that was a nice person I met at that stall, I'll just vote for them. I mean, that's how, believe it or not, some people decide to vote. I totally agree with you. Facts and figures, I mean, they kind of tend to go straight over my head at times, but I think it's smiling, it's your body language, and never ever tell anybody they're wrong. Never tell anybody they're wrong.
Sometimes there comes a point where you just have to go, the game's a bogey, I'm not going to talk to you.
Oh, definitely. I mean, my sticking point is somebody said, well, we really need nuclear weapons, and I'll give them a thing, but we need to defend it. I kind of tend to walk away from them. I think I'm not really, I really don't want to argue about it. It's so obvious that we really must get rid of nuclear weapons that I find I just can't have a conversation with somebody that's, somebody that's not doubtful about it, but quite definite in their views about nuclear weapons. I kind of find that.
Get people sometimes that are just there for a barney, and they just want an argument, and they'll stand and argue the hind legs off a donkey, for ages. And with them, you're better just cutting your losses. Clear that they're not going to be changing their mind, and they're just there to have a rammy. So I usually find a polite way of moving them on.
It's been very nice speaking to you. Thank you.
She's giving you campaigning secrets away.
It's usually a man that does that, I have to say. It's very rare for a woman, and usually their wife or their girlfriend's trying to drag them up the road.
So, I mean, the last time I was out on the Milngavie stall, it was in the beginning of December. In fact, it probably would have been around. The last time was probably around the general election. So that was different, of course, because there was an awful lot to talk about there. And we weren't campaigning for the SNP or anything, but there was a lot of talk about independence. So that was December. We get over after New Year, and we're into January, and then did you go out in the stalls at all this year?
Yes. Oh yes, we went out right up until lockdown, more or less. In fact, we're out every week. We I don't think we missed any week except the week between Christmas and New Year. Since October 2018, we haven't missed a week. I think that's true, Sheena.
Yeah.
Yes.
We've always turned out. There have been once or twice we've closed early. The problem with the gazebos and the wind and the rain, the gazebo protects you from the rain. It doesn't protect you from the wind, and in fact it can be a hassle in the wind because it gets blown to the side and takes the whole table with you. And it's not about us. I know that sounds really, it's not about us. Absolutely not. We can dress for it. No such thing as unsuitable weather. We're Scottish people. It's all about unsuitable clothes. But we can't protect the stall, the table. We have all these different, with the pool stall, we have all these different leaflets on different topics. The idea, the way I work is that if somebody comes, I'm not, I don't have the skills that Sheena's got for, making conversation with people. I've always been kind of shy and backward about talking to strangers if I don't have something to talk about. So I don't tend to be good at that kind of thing. But I'm quite good at talking about issues, and I've got long experience of talking about issues. So when it was the independence referendum, for instance, I had a big bag with loads and loads of leaflets on different topics. And towards the end, this developed, of course, but towards the end, it would be, if I asked somebody, when for or against independence, if they said no, I never let that go. You're supposed to let that go. But if they said no, it depends how they said no. If they said no, then that was it. But if they said no, I always said, what are your issues? And I had a leaflet for the issues. If there wasn't a leaflet given to us by Yes Scotland, I would make one myself. I printed them out. I printed them in my computer. So I had a leaflet on every issue that ever cropped up. So whenever anybody said an issue, I said, well, as it happens, here's one I can.
And we do have. I know you because I saw some of the ones that you did yourself, Mary. So you had those in the stall, but then of course we've got access to Pensioners for Indy National Group, and through that we have some pretty good.
Much more professional looking, also.
Yeah, but we do. But there are some good. There's the one on pensions, and there's the one on sort of generational kind of things that I think they make quite a. People just, even if folk just take those away, actually. So look, this gets us to middle of March, and the whole country goes into lockdown, and of course there's no more. I know I remember we had discussions about it, but pretty quickly we realised that had to stop. And it's been stopped since then, so what, 4 months. So but recently, the public, let's be clear about it, it's the public campaigning that stopped, because of course as a group we've carried on meeting. In fact, we've probably had more people at the meetings by doing them on Zoom than we maybe get when we have an actual one. So we heard from Grassroots Oban about their project called the National Banner Library, and how it works is that each group pays a membership fee of about, I think it's £160, and that enables them to pay for 5 banners, and those banners will be printed in Edinburgh and they're sent directly to the group. So the idea is that you can display the banners on sites in your own area, and then at the end of and then when you want to, you can exchange the banners you have with those of another group, and that way banners will be rotated regularly enough, to keep people's interest, and you can have one group will have different banners from yourself. So it struck us as being a very good idea, and the banners are. They're 2 meters long, they're heavy duty vinyl, they've got eyelets and everything, so easy to fix them to railings. And each group picks their initial 5 designs from a large number that are available, and they're divided into different sections. So there's a section of banners that are quotes from mostly politicians, and you choose 2 banners from a quote section, and then there's a section with statistics about Scotland. So you choose 2 banners from that statistics section, and then there's the last section, which is they call the memes section, and you choose 1 banner from each of those. So just looking at the section on quotes, I'm not going to read them all out, but so for example, here's Geoffrey Cox. He's the UK Attorney General last year, and last year he said, "Every sovereign state has the right to withdraw from a treaty if that treaty is not any more compatible with its interests." Of course, when he said that, Mr. Cox was talking about the UK withdrawing from Brexit. He doesn't really want it to be applied to Scotland withdrawing from the UK, but it's a good example of a quote in one area coming back to bite you in another area. Ruth Davidson, a few years back now, 24 years back, said the UK government should not block a potential second Scottish independence referendum. This weekend she was writing in the newspapers about how the UK government didn't put the boot in hard enough after 2014. So that might be quite a good one to get up. And oh dear, Marc Francois, another Conservative MP, deputy chair of the European Research Group, which European Research Group sounds quite good, doesn't it? But it's basically the very hard Brexiteers. And he says, "This is the 21st century, and you cannot hold a nation captive against their will." Aye, Mark, that's what we think as well. Then the second section is a section about statistics. Now, I do like the quote ones, but I like the statistic ones in particular. So there's ones about Scotland's GDP, there's ones about Scotland's exporting, there's about the fish industry, there's another one comparing us to Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Slovenia and Croatia. There's another one about renewable electricity, about us being a net export of fuel, power, food and drink. And so it goes on. In fact, there's quite a lot of those about us being net export of fuel and power and electricity. And then there's one that says, apparently Scotland is doomed because independence will mean a customs border between us and our biggest trading partner. Somebody had better tell Canada. So, there's some quite quirky ones. There's quite some very kind of factual ones with graphs and what have you, and some quotes from people. Here's one. The union argument in a nutshell. Scotland can't afford to be independent if its economy continues to be run as badly as Westminster runs it now. It's kind of like turns things on its head, isn't it? Somebody had better tell Canada. There's one that's the Scottish citizenship test. So, do you want to be Scottish? If the answer is yes, the reply is, okay, you're in. If the answer is no, the reply is, you do. There's another one about Scotland's space satellite industry, which probably a lot of Scots don't know about, but now employs more than 7,500 people, builds more satellites than any other country in Europe. So there's some really good banners, and they are big enough. They're big to be seen from a car or from across the road. And they're obviously, I'm looking on their website just now, and they're obviously getting more all the time. So, do you want to tell us a bit about that?
Yes, well, so I thought these banners are ideal for coming back out of lockdown, because the problem with the stalls, several problems in fact, we're having to go up to people in the streets with stalls usually and get within social distancing. You've got to get kind of close in, and everybody's scared about that. And the other thing, of course, is giving out leaflets in the street. Some people would be scared to take a leaflet that other people have touched. And I thought myself about various ways to get around this. We can try with these banners because the banners is more like about standing silently beside them. But the banners are visual. We put them onto railings so they're flat and people see them. It's not a stall.
Okay, so just to get, so the idea was, so we can't do stalls as you've been doing them. So the idea is get these banners, because they're big, they're a couple of meters long, aren't they? So the idea is we get the banners and then put them up somewhere where they're, well within eyesight and flat out. And you two came up with the idea of putting them on, well, park railings. I mean, it could be other places. And that's what you did. That's what you went out and did yesterday at, was it Alexandra Park? So Sheena, tell us how it went.
Well, it was Alexandra Park's been very busy recently. There's a big population around there, particularly a lot of people who live in flats. So it's well used by the public because they don't have a garden, many of them. Yesterday, I've got to say, it wasn't really quite as busy. I think that may be because, although it was a Saturday, a lot of people are back at work now. Also, the shops in the city centre are open now. So I'm thinking maybe that was the reason why the park wasn't quite so busy. However, we were there. We went at 2 o'clock. It did get slightly busier as we went in, but I was quite pleased it wasn't too busy for the first time we were doing it. We didn't get anyone objecting to us being there. We smiled at people from a distance and said hello, or oh, I love the dogs and stuff like that. Quite a few people did come up. People who were supporting us, people who were questioning that they didn't agree with independence, and we spoke to them. So, yeah, it was quite successful. Also, 2 people came out of their local flats who had seen us in the street. One was an English lady who lives here now. I think she was maybe born here, but she's been in London, and she spoke to us for quite some time, and I gave her a little Indy stone to keep. So, and another guy, he said, and she came along because she could see that we were there, and she said she wanted to see what it was about. So, and another guy came across the street, put some money in our bucket and said he saw us from upstairs in his flat. So that we're facing tenements in front of us. There's tenements to our right. There's cars coming up to the traffic light who are slowing down. There's buses on that route. People in buses were looking out at us. So it is a very visual area. I certainly do it there again, but I'm keeping my eye out for other places as well that we could do it. And I think they're not approaching people. I think probably people appreciated it. Certainly we didn't get any impression that people were sort of, oh, they shouldn't be doing that just now. I think people's attitude is changing to a good degree, that we really do need to get back to some sort of normality. I mean, I'm still all for kind of social distancing and, being careful. But for the ones of us who are not shielding, I do think, I mean, I've been on the bus for the first time last week. I was a bit cautious about it. It was a really strange experience. I was really quite anxious about going in the bus, but by the time I'd come back on the bus again, I felt as if, and that's the first time I'd been into the city centre since March, I felt really good. I really did. I really felt, I don't know, I just felt really quite elated that like I'd succeeded in something, and it was something pretty silly, but I just succeeded in getting on a bus and coming back and being all right. It's not 14 days yet though, so we'll wait and see.
So what plans have you got? Are you going to carry on doing it, or?
I would certainly do it again. I think Mary agrees. I would certainly do it, Alexandra, and maybe do it a couple of times a week. I mean, I'm not doing an awful lot just now, like most people.
I think part of the problem with the lockdown, the pandemic and so on, one thing we've always got to be conscious of is that not everybody is as politically interested as we are, and even people who are yes voters, even people who were quite interested at the time of referendum, you've got to keep the issue alive of the whole constitutional thing. I mean, I know that Nicola Sturgeon's on the telly doing a coronavirus thing, and she's always saying, whenever anybody says anything political or constitutional, she immediately says, I'm not here to talk about it, I'm not, which is fine, as far as it goes. But I think there comes a point you have to say, look, I mean, the virus is going to be here for the foreseeable future. We can't stop politics. And if you stop politics, you help the status quo. That's the only lot you help, if you stop talking about politics.
Well, we don't. The good thing, Mary, is we don't have the restrictions that Nicola Sturgeon has on us. You know, we can go and do it, and we don't have, you know, we don't have any journalists coming along, criticising us for it.
No, exactly.
And I think, as Val said, I think that was a really important, and I totally agree with the planting the seed. Even if somebody doesn't come and talk to us, how many people saw us out their window and thought, you know, I'm going to get a bit more interested in this, or find something out, or, you know, maybe I'm missing something here. Maybe I should take more note of what's going on. So you really don't know, you know, people that pass you and don't say anything. You've no idea what is done. I mean, certainly I would say a good phrase is, it does no harm.
Of course, it does no harm. And actually, if we don't talk about politics, it's so easy for people to become apolitical again. People, particularly, I mean, I'm living in the east end of Glasgow. Until the independence referendum, most people were apolitical. A huge proportion of people didn't even vote, weren't even registered to vote. The referendum got them interested in voting, but that's something that's happened to them, and it's going to be easily lost if we don't talk about it and keep it alive in their minds. And so we have to keep it alive in the minds even of the yes voters. And the other folk we've got to tackle are the ones who are in the middle, who were doubtful, either voted no indecisively, weakly, and might change, or voted yes indecisively and might slide. Because the argument since...
Yeah, so I think Val's got a wee point that she wants to make to us.
I was just going to say that, just from what Mary's saying about, you know, who you're reaching out to, and as well as reaching out to the people whose minds you want to change, and clearly there's more and more of them. Also, I hope you realise, you two, that you're quite inspiring to the other yesers out there as well. So ladies, you guys are not ones for bumming your load and self-promoting. There's plenty of self-promoters out there, and you're the workers. You're the ones that, you're doers rather than the self-promoters. But Mary sent me, you did take some good pictures of yourselves at the gates, and so I popped them on Facebook and Twitter, and you've been a big hit on Twitter. You've had loads of people saying thank you for doing that, and well done, ladies or girls even.
Lovely.
And keep you up to date. The number of people that have seen the pictures of you on Twitter is just under 9,000 now. Just under 9,000 people, and lots of people on Facebook, you know, saying well done, you guys. So you're spreading far and wide, and you may well, you know, give ideas to other people, thinking, well, if they can do that, so can I. At a couple of Zooms I've been in, I've been asking people, you know, have you got any idea? Has anybody got any ideas for you know, different ways of campaigning? And online is one thing, but there's always this danger you end up in a bubble talking to people, talking to yourself. You guys are clearly not doing that, so well done.
One thing that arises always now and again, not so often, but at the beginning with the pensioners for independence, there is a stigma attached to being a pensioner. You know, people think, well, I think it's a stronger stigma than it used to be, but I've had one or two people saying, why don't you call yourselves seniors for independence or something like this? But there are two different points here. One is we're trying to reach the pensioners who particularly voted no, and part of that was they've been told lies about losing their pension and so on. So we want to noise that up, to go about pensions. We're pensioners and we're not scared of losing our pension. In fact, we'll get a bigger one with independence. But the other thing is, I feel that by being obviously active pensioners, active politically in the stalls, in people's faces and so on, doing mad things, pinning all these banners up like the suffragettes did, but you know, all these things, it actually boosts the image of pensioners. The word pensioners gets a new definition. We're no longer the people, we're the baby boomers. We're there, we're boomers. We're going to change the world. And you know, if what was it Bob Dylan said, you know, if you can't join us, get out of the way or something. What's it, the Britney song? I'm old enough to remember Bob Dylan.
You remind me of that song, Mary. No, not that song. That saying. I think you've probably seen it. I think it is a meme, and it's like, I don't want people to say, "What a sweet old lady." I want people to say, "Oh my God, what the hell's she up to now?"
That's right. Yeah. That's right.
That's absolutely.
That's good.
Well, Luke, maybe that's a good place to stop. Actually, now we've got that far, and yeah, I mean, you know, I thought it was a good idea to do this because we can put it on our Pensioners for Indy website, but we can also put it out over Indy Live Radio, and yeah, maybe as you say, a few more folk from our age group will either start thinking, I should vote yes next time, or maybe they'll start thinking, well, listen to that lot, you know, maybe get themselves out onto the street or start doing something, join a group, get themselves some banners. But when I'll sort out the audio here for putting it out, and at the end of it, I'll add in a wee bit and tell people where they can get hold of the banners, because obviously the more people that get them, the better.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, great, good. Oh, thank you very much. Thanks for.
It was fun.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, if you want to find out more about the Grassroots National Banner Library, then go to their website. It's grassrootsoban.scot, or just Google Grassroots Oban, and you'll get all the information there and how to get the banners yourself.